All right, set your peepers on this, guys. This John Deere 322 garden tractor is something that it's pretty unique, needless to say. Now, these things were made from 1988 to 1992. They've got the Yanmar gas, 3-cylinder gasoline engine. Now, in 1990, the base price of these were roughly about $6,800 of these Yanmar engines. These little things are bulletproof. Now, the Yanmar gas engine that's in there is essentially the same block as that you'd find in like the 332 diesel version, but they just made some modifications to it. We'll talk about the specifications of this motor. For example, 18 horsepower, 30.3 foot-pounds of torque at 3,500 RPMs. It has a bore of 2.6 inches with a stroke of 2.5 inches with a displacement of 40.1 cubic inches. The compression ratio, on the other hand, is 8.7 to 1. Now, you see, to convert a diesel engine to a gasoline engine, that's where some modifications had to be made. One in the head, and in the gas pistons, they're designed a little bit concaved. They look like this. And the diesel pistons are usually more of like a flat top type piston, or at worst case scenario have notches for the valves, but otherwise they look like this. Now, the 322 diesel is the same specifications, all except for the horsepower and the stroke. The diesel version is actually only 16 horsepower, and the compression ratio on the diesel version is 22.4 to 1. That's quite a step up from 8.7 to 1. So the other unique thing about this engine is the fact that now, to get our spark plugs in here, they did modify that. And for our ignition system, we've got 3 separate coils running on 3 separate, what they call pulsers. So each coil has its own pickup clocked at a different spot on the flywheel. I thought that was just crazy. That's the other reason why I just had to have this mower. It was a barn find mower. We got it for $500. My dad kind of bought me this for like a Christmas present. I was pretty happy about it. But the other thing, now let's see if I can get this little unit to start up, because all I've had to do to it was put a lift pump in it and clean the fuel system out because it was bad. Other thing to note, now, I said they made these things from 1988 to 1992. In 1990, which is what this year is, they added a safety switch to the brake. So you have to press the brake in, make sure your switch is in there, and then, oh, yeah, you see, that battery's junk. All right, get some battery charger action going there. It's just not happy, is it? So this thing, it sat for several years, and like I said, all I did is replace the lift pump and cleaned up the carburetor it needs some help. It's pretty rough. Um, it's running, but I think I just need to start using it. But needless to say, it's a pretty quiet little engine. It's one of the quietest riding garden tractors I've actually ever heard at an idle. But the mind blower here, is the fact that you'll see right on here that it's a Yanmar diesel engine company, but yet this is modified into be a gasoline engine. If you get to looking around, you can see, like right there, that's where the injection pump would be mounted. It's still the governor. It is still considered the governor. But now, if we take a look at this other flavor of Yanmar diesel, now this is my John Deere 430, and this one here, this actually has a bigger displacement and stroke on it. The 430 has 20 horsepower at 36.8 foot-pounds of torque, 2.84 inch bore, and a 2.84 inch stroke. It's a 53.6 cubic inch displacement. So yeah, it's a little bit bigger, but now you see here's where my injection pump is. And that's where it would be, where the governor is behind here. But on this motor, that's where they put the injection pump. And then there's no need for ignition because it's a diesel. And now at first I thought they just took and modified the head just slightly. And I don't think that's the case, because on the other head, there's no signs of where they would put the glow plugs. That's not tapped out. And matter of fact, the spark plugs aren't even in the same spot as where the injectors are. So they did modify the head. I did debunk that. They did slightly modify the head, but otherwise the block is the same. They just added the pulsers to the front to make, they just added the pulsers to the front to make this a gas. And obviously put the carburetor on it, modified the head, and modified the pistons. It was something that I thought was kind of neat. I'm kind of a Yanmar enthusiast. I'm 42 years old, and I've never even heard of a Yanmar gasser. No, I got to have this thing. So my dad got it for me for Christmas. It was great. I was super pumped about it. Now I just got to get it mowing because it still needs a little work, and I got a huge crack in my deck right there, from the bottom all the way up to about, well, you can see where it stops about there. I'll probably do a video on that. This will probably be kind of an introduction to this tractor and this one both, because this one here, I've had it for a couple of years. I bought it at an auction, but it's got a blown head gasket. I just discovered that. Now, these motors, I tell you, they're kind of bulletproof, but what happened to this thing is I bought it at an auction. It had a really rough life. You could tell it always sat outside. And so I thought, I'll just run a bunch of seafoam and power service through it, and that'll get her to come right back around. But it didn't. Because what happened is it'd warm up and it'd start losing power and run kind of crappy. And me being an idiot, I wasn't thinking anything about valve lash. Well, it turns out towards the end of the fall, after I blew the head gasket and didn't realize it, I set the valves and it ran like $1 million. I'm like, well, they were so far out that I was creating so much compression inside those cylinders because the valves weren't opening enough. And so yeah, that's what happened there. I blew my head gasket. So now I gotta see if I can save it cheap, real cheap. So I think this is gonna conclude my Yanmar video. This is directed more towards my 322 gasser here, but it's in a sense kind of like my thoughts on the Yanmar diesels and gassers. I'm just a Yanmar enthusiast. So with that being said, please like and subscribe. I got some videos coming up on these tractors now that I'm done talking about the differences between the gas and the diesel Yanmar. And did I say like and subscribe? Yes, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and hope to see you again next time.